Okay. Okay, let's get this minimized. Okay, so I am Laura Shumway, and I'm on the Water Quality Framework team. Today and tomorrow I'll be leading both the data retrieval discussion, which we're having today, prior to Stanley's QA/QC this afternoon, and then tomorrow we're going to do all data submissions. So we actually received some data from Stanley ahead of time, so we've been able to look at that information. We have 3 of us. This is tomorrow. We have 3 of us set up to look at the data, or sorry, Thursday. We have 3 of us set up to look at the data individually, so do more one-on-one assistance with that. So today is going to be more data retrieval. In the afternoon, we'll download the data retrieval. We'll get that installed on your guys' computer so you guys can use that discovery tool, and then work with that a little bit, and then slide into the QA/QC. So this first session, I'm just going to talk about data retrieval, and then this afternoon, we're going to really get into the nitty-gritty of data retrieval. So as I said, that's the agenda. So this is the agenda for this presentation, though. So the first thing we're going to talk about is STORET, and everybody gets confused on what's the difference between WQX and STORET and the Exchange network, and the Water Quality Portal. So I'll discuss that and get you guys all on the same page with that jargon, kind of talk about some of the benefits of sharing the data, and then I'm going to hit 3 parts, 3 ways to get information out of WQX, STORET, and the portal, and how that can support the work that you're doing, regardless of what organization you're with. So this is the high-level overview of how data flows through WQX. This top tier, you have let's start here on the left. We have our lab information and we have our field data. So maybe your field data is more the probe collected data or the observations such as cloudy or sunny. And then we also have the analyzed information from the lab here as demonstrated by these test tubes. And then that data is collected and stored by the organization. And so the organizations have 2 ways in which they can submit data to WQX. The first one is via a node client, a more automated way to submit data. So the user generates XML to then be taken in by WQX. But there's another way, and we're really going to concentrate on that tomorrow, because after I think we're going to go this way. So it's going to be WQX Web. So with WQX Web, we tell WQX what is in Excel files or text files or CSV files to then convert it for us to XML to be sent to WQX. And so it's highly compatible with Excel. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, but those are the 2 ways in which to get data in. And then both ways get checked by the Exchange network. So that's more of the security piece and the transformation of information to EPA databases. And then we have that data, at least from WQX, goes to EPA STORET, the storage and retrieval system. That's our warehouse. So WQX is kind of 2 things. It's the Water Quality Exchange, and we reference it as the standard in which people share information, but it's also kind of an intermediate database before STORET. So it's just not as easy to be queried. So we have a warehouse, which is the STORET warehouse. And then the STORET warehouse, along with USDA Stewards database and USGS's NWIS database, and now their biodata database, gets served out of the Water Quality Portal. And so it gets served out in WQX compatible format, or WQX format. So USDA and USGS are mapping their data also to WQX to have it all served out in one standard format, the Water Quality Portal. We'll go to the Water Quality Portal later, so that's one of the ways in which you can retrieve information. So before we jump into talking about each of the tools, does anybody have a question on how these work together, or any overview questions of this?
So with that same CDX ID, you could have additional data sets submitted for that for air and so forth. Everything using the information.
Exactly, and when you log in to CDX to get to WQX Web, if you have other accounts with them via, I don't know exactly the other systems, but if you submit in that way, you can link to those other systems from that CDX account as well, along with WQX Web. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, let's just get into it. So the first thing I want to, the benefits of sharing information. So I jumped ahead of myself there. But the benefits of sharing information. So one of those large benefits is that it's a secondary storage strategy. The data is in another place. It's a backup of information, and we don't have to stress out if one of our databases crashes. We can always go get that information back from StoreAt. That's if you're submitting all of your information to StoreAt. It's national data sharing and reuse. So your data is published with 400 plus other data partners, and so your data is just that much more easily reused, because people will go to the water quality portal and download data from many organizations, including yours, just making it that much more and powerful of a message to use that information. It's an easy way for you to share your data back out to other partners. So if you post it to WQX StoreAt, it's easy for you to say, point someone, like, go get the data there. So you don't have to respond to individual emails to people sending Excel files or access databases with your information. So you can point them here, and actually you can get a REST-like query or an API query that we have, and you can go and send somebody that link, and it'll download the data instantly from the portal for them. I'll get on that a little bit later, but it's a really neat tool, and it's nice to not have to share it out individually. One large area where we see the benefit is with NARS information, so people are always requesting NARS data. And so it's really nice to have it up there too, because we just say, hey, go get it from the portal, and that way we don't have to worry about it. And then lastly, but definitely not least, is that once your data is in WQX StoreAt, you can participate in any of the tools that we're developing. So I'm going to talk about the StoreAt dashboard. That's a tool you can participate in, the discovery tool, which is separate from what Britt and Dwayne were talking about with the water quality sensor. So I want to make sure that's clear. It's a data discovery tool of data out of the portal. And then any future analysis tool. So we are actually going to be building a water quality assessment tool that's going to work similar to what states and tribes do for kind of 305B, 303D reporting, integrated reporting for assessments. So we're aligning tools to fill that need, and once your data is in the system, we can use that to feed into those kind of decision-making tools. So the first thing I wanted to make you guys aware of is the StoreAt dashboard. So this was built actually well before I ever came around, and we've kind of built on it throughout the years, but the StoreAt dashboard's really nice in that it was built for the regions. We built it for the regions for you guys to figure out who's submitting data, so who's in compliance with those terms and conditions in their grants or anything else that you may want to gauge on their data set, or even look at the decisions they've made and then the data that's associated with any of those decisions. So here's the dashboard. I'll go into it in more detail, but you can kind of see all these pieces that the dashboard can help with. So if you can do polls by regions and tribes, organizations, top 10s, but you can get an idea of who's submitting data, what are they submitting, and how often, and that kind of stuff. So it really provides transparency. So I'm actually going to go there now. So if we go into this new StoreAt Drupal page, so if you go to epa.gov/StoreAt, it'll take you to our new Drupal page. And right here on the front page is the StoreAt dashboard. So it's here in this green. And so if we click on the StoreAt dashboard, it'll take us to the information about the dashboard, and then you click one more time. So you hit the StoreAt dashboard. So here's that home page on the Store It dashboard. I encourage you guys to get through it and look more in depth at it if you guys want to learn more about your states or your regions or your orgs for that matter. And we'll just parse through it now. So the top warehouse characteristics, here are those reported, which doesn't surprise me. Those are all very common characteristics. As a side note, this top characteristic is temperature with 33 million. I am going to guess that that's some censored information, some continuous information, people submitting it to WQX. I want to stress that because we are exploring these other pilots, WQX is not the place to house raw continuous information. So we take summaries. We can even do it by time of day, such as evening, night, morning, noontime. We can do like 4 daily summaries if you want, but we do not want those hourly or half hour or 15-minute increment readings. It just is inefficient for WQX to house that information. And it actually throws off some statistics that come off the system, such as averages or medians and that kind of stuff, because there's just so much more dense data in a temporal time, or in temporal space. So we have the characteristics here. We can see even a few more things, such as what kind of data is in Storette. So we primarily is physical chemical. So 176 million results of physical, chemical, and biological and habitat are well below. So our next big push, we're always interested in physical chemical data, but it's bio data. And so we want to get that bio information, and to put a plug in for that, we're going to be leading a work group for us that we will be working with 2 individual partners, states preferably, or any other group that's submitting bio data, and that we want to map their data to WQX and then come up with a sort of best practices, because people are struggling getting data into WQX, the bio data, and so we really want to have a clear kind of cookbook on how people submit that information. Because we haven't had a ton of people submit information for bio data, it's hard for people, it's been hard for people to get that data in. So whereas physical chemical data is well vetted in how that's submitted, the bio data is still variable. And then in addition, we're going to have enhancements for WQX 3.0. So in the next 2 years, we're going to be looking at WQX and saying, how can the format, the schema, and how can we make it better? And biodata is going to be one of those big pushes. So if you guys are interested, let us know. Shoot Britt and or I an email saying you want to participate. And even if we can't get you as one of the primary data partners for those work for that project, we are also having a kind of board that will serve as bouncing ideas off of how we're going to capture biodata or any enhancements to WQX 3.0. So if you're interested, we'd love to have you. And that was another side note. So we also have how many records were added in the last 5 years. There's not that many put in 2016 yet, but as you see through time, people are putting data in from previous years. So we have not as much for 2016 because a lot of people are working on the 2015 or they're working on the 14, etc. So it's kind of delayed in that. We would like it to be a little quicker, but we work with what you get. So we go to the dashboard reports, and this is the place you're going to want to work from if you want to review any of the states or tribes or territories data submissions, or even your own. You can always check if your data went through. So the first thing I want to do is by region. So if you click by region, you can select a year. As you know, 2016 was not very full of data yet, so I'm actually going to go over to 2014, and I'm going to submit that. And then we get these gauges that pop up to kind of show us how much data is submitted in each region. And so here's the national gauge here. Well, I don't know where this national, maybe that's a federal level. But here's region 2. We have 241,000 records. And then this is the average that they submit. Region 2 has done in the last 5 years. And then you can see what the other regions are doing. You're welcome to look at that. But you can, if you click here on this gauge for region 2, we can get in and look at a specific state. So I'm going to go in and look at New Jersey. And then I have more information about New Jersey's WQX data submission for 2014. But I also get information about their past data submissions. So the first one is, how many organizations submit for New Jersey in 2014? 23, which is really great. It's a lot of organizations. How many orgs have ever submitted data for New Jersey? 52. We have 702 distinct characteristics, so that's everything from pH and sunny and cloudy observations to arsenic and selenium and that kind of stuff, which is quite a few. The total number of distinct characteristics ever submitted for New Jersey, 3,500, which is really impressive. Number of stations in New Jersey for 2014, over 3,000. And number of stations in New Jersey with data, so 10,000. So, and then we have over almost 20,000 stations registered in New Jersey. So the way WQX works is you have to submit your monitoring locations before you can submit data with them. And so some people load all the monitoring locations they're ever going to submit to so that they don't have to do it again, which is fine, but that means sometimes there's no data associated with it. And it looks like about 50% of the time there was no data associated with those stations. So we want to look at this specific number, the 10,000. And then if we go into these orgs submitting for New Jersey, I'll show you there. I just clicked on that number 23. And then now I can get more information about specific orgs. I can just say I want to see all the orgs, and I can hit submit. And I can get back all 23 that submitted data for 2014. But I can also limit it by data type. So if I wanted to see only federal data submitters or state submitters, volunteers, citizen scientists, or tribes, we can do that as well. And so you can see here are the orgs. These are the 15, the first 15. But if you parse over, you can see the rest of them, the other 20, to fill out the 23, the other 8. And then it keeps going back. So then you can see who submitted in 2013 and etc. So you can see last change date when they submitted the information, the percentage of the total data that exists for New Jersey and how much they're contributing. And then what kind of data they're submitting, the biological, the habitat, the physical chem, and how many stations they're submitting. The total records here is the total records that exist within the system. And if we go back, we can, like I said, we can change an organization type. So this gets registered when someone signs up for a user ID or an org ID for WQX. We register their org ID according to what kind of type they are. So volunteer organizations, etc. I'll go in here. And we can see the volunteer organizations which submit data to WQX Store Rep. If we go back to this regional one, I think you guys will want to see this. We can see the substances that were submitted. So the temperature, we have 78,000 records for temp, down to almost 2,000 for DO SAT. And we can get the results. So this link goes to WQX and pulls down all this temperature data for the state of New Jersey for 2014. And so all of these get the results that you can get right now. So it's one way to get the information. It's not necessarily the most efficient way because you'd have to go through all these tabs. We have the portal, which can facilitate data download, and the new discovery tool, but this is just one way to get more information about the data that your partners are submitting. Yeah, good, please. Let me double check. So this is the actual analyte name that we give it in WQX. Any other questions? I'm going to go back to the main location. So there's a lot of ways you can get down to more information. This works similar to the way the state one works similar to the region. You just select a state, and then you get more information about that state. So it brings you to the gauges, and then you can go in, and it's just a different way to get to the same information. Okay, so if there's no other questions on the dashboard, I'm going to move back to the PowerPoint real quick. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is the water quality portal. Sorry, these kind of came out a little blurry. I did do screenshots. So the water quality portal, which is a collaborative effort, as I said before, with USGS and USDA and EPA. It's actually housed at USGS in their CETA, on their CETA team. And it's like kind of sponsored, or I wouldn't say sponsored, not necessarily money, but it's backed by the National Water Quality Monitoring Council. They play a large role in our vision for the portal and what we're going to do with it in the future. And they kind of serve as our council for advisory on this. And so here is this first one is where we can download the data. And it has a variety of ways to query the data down. It looks a little bit different if you guys are used to the store at warehouse. We don't have as many ways to pull the data down, but we tried to be a little bit cleaner with the portal so that we can direct users better for the portal. There's other information within the portal. We have the mapping function here. And so you guys can see that. And with the mapping function, you can get a KML down or site-specific information with the lat longs for you GIS people. And then here are those REST-like queries that we can incorporate into your services. And I like to use them in a lot of maps when I'm doing display to show people the functionality and how you can get data down. But to go directly there, we can go to waterqualitydata.us. So that's the portal. We're probably going to be utilizing the portal a lot more. So rather than building out functionality with the store at warehouse, we're going to be building out functionality with the portal. So as I described with the discovery tool, we're going to be, that's built off the portal because it's being hit a lot more. So we're getting millions of record pulls from the portal, and Storette is just starting to go down. So we're embracing that and hoping to direct our energy into how to make the portal better and how to make those queries serve the role that Storette has already served or the warehouse has served for some of our applications. So the first one is you go to data download. And here it's a pretty easy, simple system to use, especially if you're already used to WQX. You can go in here, and I'm going to use New Jersey as my example again, and you can start typing New Jersey, and you select the state. And then in parentheses, you see biodata, NWIS, and Storette. So you see which systems have New Jersey data in them. So the USDA Stewards database, we don't have data in every state from that database. So you can see that here with New Jersey, we only have the 3 data sets. And then if we want to do a county, we can do Essex County, and it said NWIS and Storette data, so we didn't have biodata in that county, which is fine. And then we can do other ways to pull down the data. So we can do it by point location. So if you have the lat long and you want to say, I want to know how many stations sample within 1 mile of where one of my locations are. So we can get that data down for you. You can say USGS has a gauge that's, a half a mile away from you, and you can use that information to help you. Well, gauges, not all gauge information is in here, so I do want to caveat that, but if USGS is sampling nearby, you can find that information as well. So, and then the bounding boxes, so you can do the north, south, east, west, and just get a complete bounding box of maybe a lake or a section of your state, etc. a lot of people use this place here because they're used to states and counties. So the site parameters, we can get down information just for lakes or just for rivers and streams. It's under streams here, stream all. And we can do it org ID. So if I wanted to get NJ DEP, I could pull that down. I'm not going to limit this here, but we can get that information as well. Site IDs, so these two pieces, this is if you know that pieces of information. So if you know you want to pull down your data or a specific organization's data, you'll use an org ID. Otherwise, you leave it blank because you want to see all the orgs that submit information. Same with the site ID. If you know the site ID you're looking for under that org, you use that piece of the filter, but if not, you can ignore it. We can do sample media, we can do water, tissue, soil, etc. I'm going to leave that out. Characteristic groups, so such as nutrients or metals. Date ranges, we can pull all that. And then this is a newer addition here. So we started serving out biological data from the portal within the last 6 months. And so you can now narrow it down to assemblages and taxa names and that kind of thing. This says select database. So if you want to select a database, you can. I like to leave it at the default because if you leave it at the default, it'll query data from all the databases. But if you select a single one, obviously it would only take it from that database. And if you want to see where these sites are on a map, we can see that I have 186 sites, 46 are from NWIS, and 140 are from Storette. And I'm going to say continue. So it's pulling that data live. Sorry, I don't have my mouse on, I'm just using my... Not as clean. Okay, so now we can see the sites and how they're distributed in that county. So these blue ones are the Storette sites, and the green ones are the USGS sites. If I wanted to download a site specific, so if I wanted to say, I want to see just this one in Glen Ridge, I can download that information just by clicking on the site. I can get the site information, so the lat long, what kind of water body it is, how the lat long was collected, or I can get the results and or the metadata. And I can decide what kind of format I want, and I can download that, or I can just look at it to say who is it that submits there. So that's NJ DEP. So we have the mapping function, and you can use that function before you decide to download the data. So you can say, well, I want the site information and I want the sample results information. So you would just use the radio buttons, download, and then select the sample results and then download to get your different file formats, and it's really quick. I say download, it's 41,000 results. I say continue, and at the bottom of my screen, it'll give me a zip file or a result file that is going to be a CSV file whenever it's done pulling. And something that I know there are GIS people in here, and so I really want to point this next piece out. Well, not even just GIS people, anybody who wants to use Storette WQX as your data sharing, you have this button here that says Show API Queries. And so what this is here's this site query. So this site query does exactly what this radio button does with the download. So if you want to, if somebody said, I want to know where you sample, you could go in to the portal once you've submitted the data, and you could type in your org ID. You wouldn't necessarily even need to use any of these if you wanted to have all of your information. So if you wanted just to put your org ID and say, well, here, and you give them this query, this will download a site file for them. So you can send this in an email. You can just copy it, and when you paste it in the internet or in the browser, it downloads. And so nobody even has to go to the portal to download the information. You can easily share that this way. And so here's that station file that we just downloaded that you could be potentially sharing with a partner, and you can see that. So that contains USGS data, NJDEP data, Interstate Environmental Commission, Friends of Bonsall Preserve, etc. So you can see all the sites that are sampled in that county for New Jersey. But it's an easy way to share information with people. But here's some other cool things. We can also download the results file. And so what's nice about here is if you, within your GIS, I use this a lot. So in my attribute table, I put this results query down, and I change a piece of it, the pieces of it that are built in the query. So for example, here you can see that this says lake, reservoir, impoundment, which is what I indicated up here in the site type. So all it did is it builds a query that has exactly the same query information that I put in above. And so I can change this to say, well, I actually, want it to pull for certain sites. And so I can have someone within my ArcMap project, I can have them click on a site and get the results from WQX Storette or from the portal without ever having to go to the portal. And so it works very similar to the way it works here. So someone in my map package could click on my site and then say download data. It's that simple. So it is really nice when you're working with maps. And then we have the get feature information. So this is going to be more for your services. So to display layers, whereas this is more about downloading the data. So before I move on from this, I think this is where we've been operating from. So this is what drove the discovery tool. So you'll see a lot of parallels in how you download data from here to how the discovery tool works. But before we move on, I wanted to provide you guys with an opportunity to ask questions or make any comments. Okay. Oh, do you have a question, Britt?
I have a question. Can you go back up? I'm just wondering, when it's displaying now, you didn't do a specific date range, right?
I didn't.
But you could, so you could just, so when you say download results, it's just giving you all the results it has for those sites for all dates.
Yep.
Okay.
And if I wanted to get it from 2012, I can do the same thing, say show sites on a map, and it'll probably change. I think the first time it was around 186 sites, and now we're at 36.
Okay.
Since 2012.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
I had a question. After, excuse me, after you get your initial list of stations, can you simply click on the station itself on the map and then try to get the results?
Yes. So I click. Let's say for this station, I clicked it on, right? And so this is a Canoe Brook, a river stream station ID listed here. And right here, I have select data, so I can download the results, and I can download the data for that station since 2012. Right now, I'm going to open it, and here it is. So we can get more information about that data. And so for that site, there's a lot of different data here. So we have biodata selected, water data. This other, we'd have to check it out. It's probably like a cloudy, sunny kind of distinction. Okay, yep. So it's a habitat. So they put the other under here, and then we have the count information for the biodata. We have the results for the DO, but it's all right here from that station. Any other questions, or want to see how it functions in any way? Okay, so let's get to my favorite part, the data discovery tool. So this is something we've been working on for, I guess, a little over a year now. We had this idea that we want to develop a tool to help people find our data better. So the portal has been great and the dashboard has been great, but we really were like, how can we better serve our users? And a variety of users. So we decided to develop the data discovery tool. I'll show you here. And like I said, it allows users to more easily discover data. We have more advanced query functions. So you have the ability to query out data based on values and different things that you can't do out of the water quality portal or the store at warehouse. So you can filter down the exact data you want. And you can have more information about the data before you download it. So if you wanted to know that here are the habitat exact characteristics, we can see that before we decide to use it in some of our analyses. It uses open source R coding. So what's nice about that is when we build this tool and we give it out to you guys to use, if anybody wants to create new functionality off the tool in R, we can then take that back and post it up to our GitHub site so that other people can use that functionality. So because R is a free source coding, we can enhance it probably quicker because other people can work with us on it. It's not just us. And so if we want to incorporate that functionality, we can do that after testing it, of course. And it's the first step in creating analysis tools off the water quality portal. And so you can see here, here's some of the functionality that this data discovery tool can do, but I'm going to show you that in live form. So the first thing you need to do is, I know some people may have received the information from Stanley and or Bob that to download R, to install R on your computer. And so this is why, because you don't need to know how to use R or how to code to run the tool. But you need R to run the tool because it's running off of that software. So when you get into R, it's really simple. You see this, which might be a little overwhelming if you're not a coder, but it's just 2 easy steps. You just say, hey, I need to change my directory, and then you'll navigate to the folder where your zip file is containing the data, because we'll talk about this afternoon when you install it, and then you'll go into identifying the source R code, and then it opens up an Internet Explorer, and you don't have to worry about R anymore. You just can't close it out. So once you get that source R code loaded, you can now filter to build your query. And so when you expand these buttons, this looks very familiar. It looks just like the portal because it's utilizing the services off the portal. The sampling parameters, the site parameters, etc. So I expanded them all just to show you guys the similarities between the portal. But I'm going to do another query, so I'm going to use New Jersey as my guinea pig again, and I'm going to use Essex County again. So there was a lot of data there. I could do more. The more queries you put on this initial download, the slower it's going to be because the portal, just to describe it, the portal, it taxes the portal more the more queries you put on. And so you can filter the data within the tool. So if you're ever struggling, just reduce your queries down a little bit and then filter it further through the tool. And so I'm going to use that date range again, 01/01/2012. Same thing, I can get down to water and select the sample media or anything else. I'm actually going to remove it just so it works quicker. And then site parameters, site type, orgs, etc. So we hit retrieve data. And it takes about, for this information, it works just like the portal. It's pulling live. It's doing the record count and the station count. Oh, geez. Let me make sure I should be connected to the internet. Yeah, we're good. No, we don't have to have it because it'll default back to what is the current date. So it'll default back to this date. Sorry, let me check it out. It's weird. Ooh, there it went. Okay. It did that time. Okay, so it's 11,000 results for 41 stations. And then now I can import that information. I don't know if that was an internet access issue since I'm running off of Wi-Fi. And so once again, it's pulling live from the portal. So I think this takes about 45 seconds to pull in. I timed it before today. So just be patient. It's actually really quick considering it's 45 seconds. What's up?
And I have a question. So can you do the query separately yourself in Water Quality Portal and then import your data from your machine to this data discovery tool?
Not as of yet.
Okay.
So the analysis tool, we're building it so that someone can load an external data set, something that wouldn't necessarily need to be in WQX to do the analyses. But for this one, no.
Okay.
Because we're filtering it out. Yeah. But if you were to go that route on the analysis tool, you would need to match a certain format because no matter what, the tool needs to know what's in each column. Okay, so now it says that data import is complete. So I'm going to hit close. And I can scroll up here, and I want to go to this check data tab. And so the check data tells us information about the data that we just loaded into the tool. So we haven't downloaded it all, but it is loaded into the tool. So this many records, that many stations, so total parameters, 1,030 non-detects. And so that's something we had to adjust for this data discovery tool. So if you want non-detects, what do you want to do with them? And so the first thing you can do is you have 4 options with non-detects. We don't have a define your own, but you can either ignore non-detects if you want. You can set them equal to 0. So for all the summary statistics that we generate, all your non-detects such as present below quantitation limit, present above quantitation limit would be equal to 0. So what you may not want to do it if it's present above quantitation limit, if you know that the data contains that. But if it doesn't, you can do the 0 if you would like. But you can also do equal to the limit of detection or equal to half the limit of the detection. So I really like the limit of detection method, but everybody has their own way to do it. And then this is information about the next 2 tabs. So we move along the tabs, and so here's all the data that I pulled down and the stations names. We have the non-detects and what I just set them to. So we have entero, and so I'm kind of glad I set that to equal to detection limit because entero, it could have been above detection limit if it was a non-detect. So I want that to be set at the detection limit, and then the rest of these values. So there sometimes is data without units in the system. There wasn't any in this, but when people get around it in some ways, which is a rarity, but they do exist. So you can choose to ignore that information if you'd like. Data without methods. There's no data here without methods, but if there wasn't, we'd find that. We could filter that out. Any duplicates? No duplicates here. And then here are, if we went through all these tabs and did more information with those, or limited them, filtered them in any way, this would be our final data set that will be going into the data discovery tool. And so we can go to the summary, and I hit summarize data. And what I like about this one is it gives me the counts of each characteristic for each station. And so I know if I have enough data to do, here we can, one of these analyses, right? So these all have one count. I don't know if I want to use that for analyses, but it's good for us to know what exists in that data set. It helps us discover what's in the information. We can always, at any point along the way, we can save the data that we're working with. We can download it. So it's not downloaded into our documents or databases or anything, but at any point you're welcome to do it based on the filters that you've provided. And so now, once we've determined what we want to do with the data set and how we want to filter it to be used for analyses, we go into this View Data tab. And so this View Data tab shows us the locations where data exists for Essex County for New Jersey. And so I can click on a station. Let's just use this one. You know, I actually might be able to use a Passaic one. Passaic River. So we select a station, and then we can move over here to the table. And so here's the information selected at that station, or selected information collected at that station. And you see here in this the station information, when we click on it, we have the station name, we have the total number of samples, and then total number of results in that data set. So samples are a little different than results. It's all how a user identified their activity IDs. If you're used to WQX, it identifies a suite of samples selected at a certain location. So sometimes, most of the time, you'll have less samples than you will results, depending on how people submitted the data. So we move into the table. That's the filtered data, or the data we selected with that station. We can go into the station summary, and it'll tell me all the parameters collected at that station. And I can see how they are distributed along with the other sites, or the other characteristics sampled. So I know that there are 113 ammonia nitrogen and 113 nitrate. So I can see that I have enough data since 2012 to do a good analysis on most of these parameters at this site location. And another thing we have here, so we have some of the primary parameters to display here in this frequency, but we can see how frequently someone sampled data. So we can see that they ramp up their sampling within the core, the field season, so probably from around May to the fall, and then in the winter it sparses out, and then once again in the field season they ramp up again. So we can see the distribution of how often they're sampling, and we can change this. So if I didn't want to see fecal coliform, it'll change. It'll take it out of this table, and I can add in, well, I can add in organic carbon, because it'll give me the option of anything that's sampled at the location. I can get the dew temperature water. I can add that to here too. So if I wanted to see the distribution, which is nice. A lot of people use, when they want to review QAPs, some people require a frequency table indicating how often someone aims to submit data within a year or two. This kind of validates that, yes, they did or didn't sample that frequently. And then we...
I have a question on the filters that you use.
Yeah.
What if the organization submitted some QC data, let's say duplicate field data, that should be identified or be able to separate that out from the field samples? Is that correct?
Yeah, so when we went through those filters under this check data tab, if there were duplicates, it would have popped up and told me that there were duplicates and what kind of duplicates they were. So some things are true field duplicates. I took exactly 2 samples, but some things are indicated as a duplicate if they were ran in the lab or in the field, both ran pH or something. So it depends on what kind of duplicate and then what you want to do with that. So throughout the check data, you can decide what you want to do with those duplicates or blanks, all of that information. Okay, and then I'm going to scoot up here to this parameter unit summary. So the parameter unit summary will give us a table of the information and how they correspond together. So let's say I wanted to see how nitrate looked with pH and DO. So I have, I can see how they work together, and I can see the table. This axis shows you the increments of the DO. This one does the nitrate, and then this one does your pH. And then you can see pH is in red, nitrate's in blue, DO is in yellow. And we can zoom in on here. I don't have my mouse, but you can oh yeah, you can zoom in. So I can zoom in further into different areas of this table to say, I really want to know what happened here in May of 2015, 2012. So I can see those fluctuations within May and April. or you can reset the zoom and look at it in its entirety. And then one more thing, we can get into the filter by these filters here on the left, which are nice, that we can filter out certain organizations. So if I didn't want to see the USGS data, I can take it out, and it's not going to influence how these tables are being driven. So it'll change the summaries. Sorry, I need to go back to my map table here. Well, it might. Said it might drive it. Oh, geez. It brought me back. Okay, go to my view data. Well, the functionality of the data filters, it works if, I think I made it a little overwhelmed there, but we can change it to look at the parameters. If you wanted to look at specific parameters, you can say, I want to see nitrate data, but I also want to see data that isn't qualified, or I want to see the value range. So when you have nitrate selected, you can then say, I want to see only data above 0.02 milligrams per liter. And so it kind of serves as a function of looking at where your thresholds or your criteria fall with that data, and which builds on the next tool. So the data analysis tool that we're going to create is going to utilize the functionality of this tool to then bring a data set into the analysis tool to do the analyses for you. So that's why we've built in these functions for the filters, that because that leads us to the next stage of the analysis tool to assess against criteria. So at this point, we entered a little bit early, and we can get into some of the installations here if you want. But I want to allow you guys questions or anything you guys want me to elaborate on. Now's the time.
So is it the next thing that you're going to show us that has these statistical summaries, or is there a statistical summary you can use on what you just showed us?
So the next tool will do the statistics, but it's actually going to do the assessment information. So it will show you mean, maxes, and stuff of your data when we build out the next tool, which we're working on now, but it doesn't do it yet for this tool. It only does the discovery pieces, as I showed here. So where you guys can save data and then start doing analysis yourself.
I have a question. With any of these tools, is it possible to link with the flow data? You have your sample point. Is there flow data associated with that?
Not yet. We're actually trying to link the portal with it. So, so that the tool could utilize this functionality. We want the portal to be able to find where those USGS flow stations are to link the information, but we're working towards it, but it's running concurrently with this kind of tool.
Okay, because, it's useful to know if it was data collected during a strong sampling event versus regular sampling, and associate the flow with the water quality data.
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool thing to do with like this kind of table here, as I'm showing here. You could see the flow, especially when it comes to turbidity and DO and such. I'll put it on my wish list. Any other questions?
Getting, like, let's say, a precipitation data from nearby stations?
So we do house some precipitation data in WQX, but that would work similar to the stations for USGS. We have to figure out how to integrate that information. But we haven't explored that as much yet since we've been working with the USGS stations first. But I think that's another thing that we could add in. precipitation information. Anything else?
Not right now. I think we have to start trying to use the tool in a step-by-step process, and went through it pretty quick. So
Yeah.
I guess that's this afternoon, right? So
Well, we can do it. We can kickstart the data installations now, or we can take a longer break and we can wait until this afternoon. It's whatever you guys want to do. So if people have R installed on their computer already, we can start working with them. We should pass out the WQP tool zip file. That would be a good time to do that now too, so that people are ready for that installation set.
that's in the zip file that you sent out?
To you, yeah. So you and Bob have it.
Right, so I'm going to have to email that to the folks, so I don't know if you want to take a break or you want to just take an early lunch. What do you want to do?
Maybe we should do the second one because by the time the email gets to them, we'll be close to lunch anyway.
Okay, so you're going to show the second, I can have some good lunch.
Yeah. All right, so what time do you still want to reconvene at 1:15?
Maybe we can start at 1 and then try to send a little earlier.
That
Nice.
sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds like a good Tuesday plan.
I don't bother you, I just want to make sure I have the sign-in sheet so I can email the tool to everyone.